Hello, we are back again, and now what am I going to talk about? You see, UFC lately has been very interesting. MMA has had some interesting things going on. I know we had a weekend where we had three shows. We had a World Series fighting show, we had a Bellator show, we had a UFC show in Mexico, and there was a lot of discussion coming out of that. Bellator, it was nice to see take a different approach and kind of make themselves look a little bit different from the UFC. I know we had Tito Ortiz versus Stefan Bonner, which was interesting. I did watch it. I could talk about that another time though. But I want to talk about the UFC show and some discussion that's come out over the last few days about the UFC. We had the heavyweight fight between Mark Hunt and Vanderlei Silva, Freudian slip, I wish. Mark Hunt and Fabricio Verdum, sorry. And the fight happened. I felt Hunt did better than what people thought he could do. He paced himself very, very well, but in the end he fell prey to a Fabricio Verdum knee, and that's what ended the fight for him. And Fabricio Verdum is the UFC interim heavyweight champion. Very well earned, very, very skilled fighter, very much improved fighter in all areas of the game. Not necessarily his jiu-jitsu, because his jiu-jitsu is just tremendous anyways, but his striking has really come a long, long way now, and he's stopping guys with striking now, which is very impressive. I do think he tried to do that Paul Possum thing, where, when he gets hit and he falls down on his back and then you fall into his guard and then he submits you. I do feel that he was trying to do that, but I want to say something just before I get to the topic at hand. Very interesting that Mark Hunt did not allow himself to get caught in anything, because he was down with Verdum for a lot longer than people realise and got back up. So I was quite impressed there. So it looks like Hunt is getting better there. Makes me very interested for the next Mark Hunt fight, and I was just thinking about heavyweights and the UFC heavyweights and big fights at the heavyweight division, and Verdum Velasquez will be a reasonably big fight. I think Verdum has a lot of momentum, and I think you can really easily market him when you highlight some of the things he's done since 2010. Realistically, you do have a hell of a push for Verdum right now. Being the guy that submitted Fedor, being the guy that up Royna's face, guy that knocked out Mark Hunt, guy that is now the UFC interim champion, guy that submitted Nogueira, guy that knocked out Mike Russo in like 49 seconds or something. There's a lot that you can do now in terms of promoting Verdum. But you do think about big fights that the UFC need, and I hear next year they're going to have a lot of shows next year, and you always need big fights. You always need, that special attraction fight that draws not just us, the diehards, but the other fans too. Because this is not like college level wrestling anymore. This is a spectator sport. This is a spectator sport, and you do need that spectacle as well as the pure sport part. And I know that a lot of fans don't really like that. I know fans see this as a pure sport. I see it as a sport, but a spectator sport, and you do need those things. And a lot of fans I do hear say that we need big fights, we need big fights, we need big fights. And obviously this week we had the UFC Time Is Now press conference, and apparently there was going to be a special announcement, but whatever happened didn't happen, so they couldn't announce it. But they had an announcement of all these fights that we already knew were happening. We had Vitor Belfort and Chris Weidman. We had John Jones and Daniel Cormier. We had Ronda Rousey and Kat Zingano. We had Nick Diaz and Anderson Silva, Conor McGregor and Dennis Siver. And I thought it was very interesting because a lot of people, when I did a video a few months ago, and if you haven't, feel free to check it out, Nick Diaz versus Anderson Silva, I said that was a win-win situation. You have two guys coming off losses that are big stars, that is a dream fight, no one really loses, the fans benefit, it's a big fight. And a lot of fans didn't like the idea of this fight. A lot of fans felt that this was a freak show fight. There's no sense. They're fighting out of their weight classes. Well, Nick is fighting out of his weight class, even though he's fought as a middleweight before. Fans didn't like the idea of this, but they keep saying we need big fights. And on the topic of all of this and where this is going, is that during this UFC Time Is Now, a question was posed to Dana White, and it's based on something that we keep hearing every couple of days or every couple of months regarding one former UFC champion that I would say lit the world on fire in a lot of ways, and really, in my opinion, added that sizzle to the heavyweight division and that fan interest in the heavyweight division that we hadn't seen before in the UFC. And Dana White was asked about Brock Lesnar. And Brock Lesnar, his WWE contract, I believe, was coming up or coming to an end fairly soon. And I don't think he'll be staying with this whole, new payment system. I don't know if they can afford to pay him, especially with this WWE network. I don't think it's been what they think it would be. And I could see Brock eventually going. And I have heard, and it has been rumoured, that Brock is interested in fighting. And it's been confirmed by Dana White that Brock is interested in fighting, and that they've spoken recently and spoken sometime this year. I know Paul Heyman done an interview on Ariel Helwani's show and somewhat hinted at that too. And I don't know if that's more of a contract negotiation ploy to get more money out of the WWE, but I don't know if the WWE can afford to pay him all of that with this current, structure that they are, working on. And it does make me interested in the idea of Brock Lesnar coming back. And apparently he's saying he's more healthy than he was before. And, he wants to come back and have a fight. I know that about 2 years ago, there was the rumour that Brock Lesnar and Fedor were going to fight. Fedor was going to come out of retirement. They were going to have this big fight in the UFC. And unfortunately it fell through after Fedor's dad died. And he kind of was like, look, I just don't have it in me to come back. And I respect that decision. I think that's a very honourable decision to make. And obviously that fell through with Brock. But this rumour has kept popping up back and forth for a while. And now I want to talk about it. Because what happens if Brock Lesnar comes back to the UFC? What kind of role does he play in the UFC? Is he going to be pushed as a contender to fight for the heavyweight title? Or is he going to be a special attraction kind of fighter? Bear in mind, the UFC does need big fights, and they don't get any bigger when you have Brock Lesnar. Let's just remember this. Brock Lesnar was the biggest draw in the UFC between the years of 2008 to 2011. He was a serious shot in the arm for that weight class heavyweights, in my opinion, when it came to the popularity and when it came to fan interest. I think the heavyweight division as a whole has really been on a roll over the last few years. I think that when you look back when there was Pride in the UFC, I'm going to be really honest with you, the Pride heavyweight title was considered more important and had more fan interest than the actual UFC heavyweight title. It would be like the Bellator heavyweight title now versus the UFC heavyweight title now. That's how I would have compared the UFC back then and Pride back then. And then obviously Pride fell through and the UFC had to buy it. And then you had heavyweights like Nogueira and Crow Cop and Heath Herring coming over and adding a bit more competitiveness to it and a bit more credibility to it. Then you had Frank Mir making his comeback and really starting to live up to his potential again after floundering after those injuries and all the addictions and all that. He was starting to make a comeback. Then you had guys not in the UFC at the time, but Shane Carwin and Cain Velasquez on the rise, slowly developing their skills. When they would come into the UFC, you had Junior Dos Santos developing his skills outside of the UFC, soon on his way there. You had lots of things going on. You even had Verdum actually being a contender there in the UFC at the time. And you had a lot of interest. Then you had Randy Couture smashing about Tim Sylvia. Again, more interest. But to me, the one thing that tipped it over the edge was when Brock Lesnar signed that UFC contract, had his first fight with Frank Mir, and there was so much interest. And I'll even say this, I was never really very much interested in UFC heavyweight fighting for a long time. Until Brock Lesnar came over. Alright, I was intrigued when Nogueira came over. I was intrigued with the idea of Fedor going over there, but I was not that interested in UFC heavyweight fighting. But then Brock Lesnar comes over and it creates so much controversy, and he's so polarizing to so many people that it just made everything far more interesting. And it just brought in lots of fans who were pro wrestling fans. It brought in lots of fans who were aware of Brock Lesnar, and it just created this wave of momentum and this buzz about heavyweights, where a heavyweight title fight in the UFC drew big money, and other UFC heavyweights really benefited from that. If you don't believe me, just look at the track records. I know a lot of fans or fighters, oh yeah, he brought a lot of fans. That's one of the things that annoys me. A lot of these fighters go, oh, he brought a lot of fans into the sport, yeah, but do, you know. That's the whole point. he brought a lot of whole fans into the sport who now know who you are. That's the problem. There's a reason why certain fighters are getting paid a lot more nowadays, and certain fighters have done very well coming off fighting Brock Lesnar because of that. And it does annoy me when they kind of downplay that. No, you actually become a bigger star. The whole fucking world knows who you are because you've been on a card with Brock Lesnar, or you fought Brock Lesnar, or you fought someone with that kind of name value, and it's up to your name value and your fan base and your Twitter following and your paycheck and sponsors. So, it does rub me in the eye, and a lot of fans into the sport. It's just like, seriously, get real. It's a spectator sport. Now, with that being said, Brock Lesnar returning to the UFC right now, what would that mean? What would that do? I know a lot of people are saying, well, I'm not really into seeing Brock coming back, trying to fight for the heavyweight title. We saw what happened when he fought Alistair Overeem. We saw what happened when he fought Cain Velasquez. He doesn't like being hit. It's not, and I heard Jim Ross on his podcast say, oh, well, who doesn't like being hit? I don't like being hit. No, JR, what it is that his stand-up is his weakest area defensively. He can definitely punch. He's definitely got power in his hands, but the stand-up was his weakest area, and it doesn't look good when you're a potentially world-class fighter and you're taking a jab and then a combination to the face and then you're running like this. That doesn't look good. That looks really, really bad, and that is something he needs to work on. To me, if he's coming back to the UFC to be a contender for the belt, then I would be a lot more interested if he actually brought in the best Muay Thai training team or best kickboxing training team to address that hole, because that's one of his biggest holes he's ever had, is his stand-up. If it's to be a special attraction, well, he'll be a special attraction anyways, but if it's just brought in to have a few fun fights to generate interest, I don't see a problem. I think it would be very good to have him back. I think it would be mutually beneficial for him to be back. And apparently he's still got questions about his fighting career. And there's some what ifs there. And if you're a competitor and you have those what ifs, the best way to get rid of them is to make them happen. And I'd be very intrigued to see what happens if Brock comes back. Do I think he'll win the heavyweight title? I don't see him beating Cain Velasquez. I'm going to be really honest with you. Do I see him beating some of the heavyweights? Yeah. Do I see a fight with him and Bigfoot Silver being interesting? Yeah. Do I see a third fight with him and Frank Mir? Yeah. Do I see a fight with him and Josh Barnett? Oh, I would love to see that now, coming to think of it. That would be interesting. What about a rematch with Alistair Overeem? That would be a very good revenge storyline in a sense for promotion, because there's a lot of controversy as to why Alistair really won that fight, but he won that fight because he kicked the guy in the ribs and he hit him several times to the body. But a lot of people are saying this current Alistair Overeem that is not all geared up and TRT'd up, will he have the same, I think there's a lot of interest in some Brock Lesnar fights. Him and Roy Nelson would be a great one. I wouldn't mind seeing Brock Lesnar and Mark Hunt. I think that would be an awesome fight, personally. I think that would generate a lot of money. Mark Hunt has a fan following, fans love him, and then you have Brock Lesnar in there, and I think you get the best of both worlds when you put the two of them together. I think there's a lot of interesting fights for Brock Lesnar to have as a heavyweight, and I think more than that, it's good for business if it means more people watching your UFCs. I do think they're doing too many, but if you need big fights, then they don't get any bigger than having Brock Lesnar there, as well as the Conor McGregors and the Ronda Rouseys and the John Jones and Daniel Cormiers. Brock Lesnar coming back would really be very interesting. Do I think it's going to happen? Never say never. And that's all I'm going to say, and I'm going to stop. I'm sorry if this video didn't make too much sense. I do MMA videos, I do pro wrestling videos, I do videos on quite a few things. If you haven't already, like, share, comment down below. Do you want to see Brock Lesnar back in the UFC? Is he going to stay with the WWE? Do you think he'll leave it? And here's one I haven't said. What if he ends up in Bellator? It's an interesting one, and that could happen. What if Brock Lesnar ends up in Bellator? That's another one. Let me know what you think about all of that's been shared and said. If you want to see Brock back, how would he be used in the UFC? What kind of role would he have in the UFC? Could he actually be a UFC champion again? Let me know all that you think and feel. If you've seen Foxcatcher, let me know if that's any good, because I really want to see that film, by the way. I'm going to head out. I need to have my tea. Take care, peace, and subscribe.